Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to the November art critique. Now, this first one here that I'm going to be recording is submitted by Arjen, so thanks a bunch, man, for submitting, and sorry if I butchered your name. I suck at pronunciation. But anyways, what we have here is this cool looking Mars lander concept that he submitted here. Now, I do like the overall idea, but there are a few things I definitely want to nitpick on here to just kind of discuss in this video for everyone. Now, I don't have any specific render attached, so we can't really speak on that, so I'm assuming you're submitting this just for a more model critique, and I guess we'll start here from top to bottom. Now, I really like the top that you did here. I especially like how you follow the topology flow. If I go into edit mode for this guy, am I selecting the wrong piece? I see the issue here. You have all these modifiers applied. Okay, we'll just go into object wireframe instead. But as you can see, he has a really good flow of topology right here. Everything is nice and smooth. Shading's good. No real complaints here. Now, there is one thing I do want to nitpick, and it's the fact that these pieces here, these panels, these little button things, they're exactly the same as it goes around. There's no visual difference here to kind of make it stand out. It has the same generic feel to it. And whenever you look at that, you're not going to have this sense of excitement built because it's the same piece repeating. Now, something like this, so these little decals are completely fine, but for major props like this, it kind of removes that unique feel to it. And I can tell what you did here was you just ran a radial array, which is fine, but I think for big panels like this, perhaps maybe have like one or two of each at most, maybe like one on this side, then have like a different, idea here on the back. Maybe research some rocket concepts, some SpaceX shuttles, and just kind of see how their designs go, and maybe make something a bit different here on the back instead. Now, I haven't seen your final render, not sure if you've done it yet, but I would definitely make sure in that final render, since this piece is so, pretty generic and empty, I would make sure you have this as like some sort of reflective screen or emissive lighting going on, and maybe some extra detail down here. It's fine in solid view, I'm not going to speak for it too much on that, but in rendered view, make sure you make this area pop a bit more and make it more visually appealing. Now, I'm a big fan of what you did here with these little panels going on, as you can see. Now, if you do have decal machine, I'd probably recommend doing these little pieces with decals or something, just because it'll have less geo count and overall won't be as hefty on the scene, but it doesn't really matter so long as your machine can run it. So overall, the top isn't bad. Those are just the few things I wanted to bring up. Now, I do want to mention that I feel a lot of people have an idea in mind, and what they tend to do, rather than focusing on a more visual aesthetic or going for a specific form, they just tend to throw on a ton of details and try to have that make up for the lack of form to it. And I'm not saying this is necessarily the case, but what I do feel is up here, you didn't have a real form going for it. I would go for more of a form, more of a visual idea. Focus more on the form in the design and let the details come with it, because just plastering random designs can actually tend to make it look a lot worse than if you had less designs but more form to it, if that makes sense. A really good reference actually are the new interiors. If you take a look at the new SpaceX rocket interiors, they're super modern, super clean, very minimal. It's just generic sci-fi looking white materials and not too much going on the inside actually. Whereas on the old shuttles, they all look congested and clogged because there is so much tech in there going on. And you can just see a lot of times less is more, just because of how more visually appealing it'll become. So I would recommend maybe looking at some of the SpaceX type of designs and kind of base some ideas off that and go for something a bit more minimal. But this is something I think that we all go through at some stage in modeling, including myself. I used to do the same thing, but I tend to focus more on form nowadays, so it's always very important. Okay, so that's the upper part. I want to talk about the bottom now. So for this bottom area, I can tell you ran a subsurf to kind of round out these areas a bit. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I can tell that you had issues with these areas, right? So what you did was you took your crease and just ramped it up to 1. So before it probably looked like this, right? And that's actually fine. This doesn't look awful really. I wasn't too sure why you ran a crease here. What you could have done is just tightened it up like this and made it, you know, more of a bevel than an actual subsurf. So I don't know if you're trying to add a bevel afterwards or what, but I wouldn't keep these fully creased because now we have a perfectly sharp edge which can exist in real life, and also you're not going to have those nice reflections around the corners like the bevels give you. So what you could do is come in here and add on, I don't know if this is going to collapse because of how heavy it is, but you could combine the crease with a small bevel like this, but I don't think it's really necessary when you could simply just come in here and hold off on your creasing, right? You don't really need a full level of creasing. Just go in here, right? Alt-Shift click everything, and maybe give this mean crease like 0.8. So now we basically, that's actually probably too low. We could disable auto smooth or just go for like 0.7, 0.5. There we go. Yeah, go for something lower like 0.5. It'll have the same effect as the bevel. So for that, that's probably my only complaint really, because now you can see around these edges here, we have nice reflections and lighting bouncing off of them, right? Look at the difference here. If we, well, I guess it was mirrored around the whole thing. But if I were to bring this back up to 1, now we have no reflection. It just looks kind of blank. And if we bring this back to 0.5 or so, now we have nice reflections around the edges, which is exactly what we want. So that's what I would definitely recommend doing. It might be a bit nitpicky, but I think bevels and edges that aren't perfectly sharp are essential for any sort of hard surface, so keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and go down here, and this is actually good. You have a bevel running, as I can see. I think you have a bevel running. Yeah, right here. And this looks really nice. One complaint though, it's a bit too blocky. If we zoom in enough, you can see it almost looks low poly. Now, for a game asset, this is probably the exact style I'd go for. Keep it low poly, and from a distance you're not going to really see it. But on a concept render, which I'm not sure if this is what you're going to end up going for, but I assume so because of the poly count here. So on this one, we definitely need a bit higher resolution to make it more rounded. So if I really bring this bevel in, you're going to see it's kind of blocky going around. We want to run a subsurf to clean that up. So what I would recommend doing, if you have hard ops, if you don't, I would recommend adding a subsurf and putting it to the top of the stack. But in hard ops, you can just go in here, and I think it's alt click, right? Yeah, alt click on subsurf. That'll put it on the first in the stack. And you're going to see this kind of collapse. So I might need to look at the base geometry here. I can tell you did a lot of radial arrays on this one. Okay, so that's what we have going on. So yeah, I would come in here, run a subsurf at the top of the stack, and then all I'd recommend doing is crease the bottom and the top. Bring that crease up. So now what we're going to have, well, I guess maybe the way the booleans are cut out might be a little bit problematic, won't they? So maybe what I'll do is come in here and smart apply, like that. Okay, and then we could try running the subsurf again. Put this on the top of the stack. It's going to kind of collapse, so we need to make sure we run a crease around all of the harsh edges. So what we can do is go to edge mode, we go to select, and then select sharp edges and bring the mean crease up to 1. And now we actually have the subsurf working with us, as you can see, before and after. Now it's a lot smoother. We can increase this like 2 as well. And it's going to get kind of picky on the bottom here, so we might need to do some merges, right? And try to deal with it like that. But this is going to get kind of messy because we didn't really deal with this from the get-go. Whenever you run a subsurf like this, you always want to make sure you deal with these issues from the get-go, because then we have a lot of problems like this. But they can mostly be fixed, but the real reason they're occurring is because we have such a dense amount of subdivisions coming in. But it would probably be worth your time coming in here and fixing those issues, just because, you know, it just looks nice when it's more rounded like that. And also, the subsurf is running on n-gons, so the crease can only go to a certain extent. We could try creasing these areas, right? But maybe not that area. So yeah, the subsurf is going to be a bit problematic, hence why I said maybe make sure it's rounded beforehand before you do all this type of modeling, because going back and making things more smooth can oftentimes be pretty difficult. But this is one way to increase the resolution a bit. But overall, it's not really a huge deal, just something I wanted to point out. And this inside one, no real complaints here. You actually have a bevel controlling this area very nicely. Good job on that. Don't really have much to complain about on that one. Now these little panels right here, right? It's very interesting. I like the concept, but I don't like how they're connected to nothing. For concept type of renders and having a good portfolio piece, I'd always recommend, even if it seems overkill, make sure it makes sense unless you absolutely cannot see it. But on a model like this, that intersection is just way too obvious, something I could definitely never get away with when it comes to the way I model. I just would not like this as a portfolio piece, having it like this. So I would recommend coming in here and either running a union to get a nice bevel around it, or what you could do is run a hole around here on the side. Perhaps what we could do is, let's go around to this side, to the active one. Perhaps you could come in here and maybe run a hole, right? Maybe extrude this back, or what we could do is use loop tools and go to circle, like that. And you know, kind of get something like that, but probably a bit overkill on that one. I would recommend using a union. So what we're going to do, I think this is a mesh, right? Yeah, it's a mesh, so we could come in here, shift click this, and then Control plus to run a union. And look at that, it's going to basically run a nice little bevel between the two objects. Now the shading is going to get pretty bad because of where it's kind of, you know, connected to. So what you could do on this area, you could use a normal transfer, or perhaps you could make it a bit more isolated. Kind of a problematic solution for either, but if you put this in just the right position, you can probably get away with it. The only bad shading areas are around here. So from a distance, not really a big deal, but I would try your best to get some nice shading in there. So yeah, a union's probably your best bet unless you want to get in and change the topology and make a circular cutout for it. These are the types of things you always want to plan out beforehand, because then when you try to go back and fix it, then you have to deal with bad shading, artifacts, mesh cleanup, whatever it may be. Now the bottom here is probably my favorite part of the entire model, just because of how interesting and unique you made these pieces here. I really like it. So what we're going to need to do is just kind of discuss a few things. First thing, I don't know if you missed it, but right here, this massive artifact, too obvious. We're going to go ahead and just drop the bevel just a bit until it goes away, like that. No big deal. In the future, I would avoid making really close booleans like this, because then when you have a boolean running and there's very limited area between the edge and where the boolean is, then you're going to get overlaps really easily. So maybe next time, with your boolean, pull it out a bit more so that way you have more buffer for bevel. Also, I think the bevel's probably a bit too big. I think bevels, if you want to go for more of like a mechanical design, should be used in, you know, sparingly in terms of the size. I would definitely make sure this bevel is a bit lower. In my opinion, it looks a bit more manufactured and natural looking, but that's just me and how I tend to work, so whatever you want really. There's also a few small issues in these boolean cuts, so I'm going to go ahead and change the view clipping down a bit. Okay, this area right here, as you can see, the bevel is kind of not very uniform. What I would recommend doing is go into your auto smooth, jot this down a bit, or in this case higher, do like 68, and that'll actually catch everything. At these angles, it's really easy for the auto smooth to not catch very well at all, so I would definitely recommend going in here and just increasing that a bit. You could also go to your bevel modifier and under geometry, turn off loop slide, and that's going to actually make some of these a bit more even. Now, not too much has changed in this one, but sometimes you can mess with that and see how it works. And just a few other nitpicky type of things, like these artifacts right here, you need to make sure you get in and you know, fix those up. Merge these areas together or slide them out. Make sure there's no artifacts anywhere unless they're very tiny and unnoticeable. Same for this piece, make sure you have an actual connection point, like something like this. It's just super easy to, you know, hop in, take your, let's apply, which bevel is this? Let's apply the chamfer bevel. It's really easy to hop in here, just press I to inset, right? And then extrude back, and now we actually have something that makes sense, right? Really easy to do, doesn't take too long, and it just makes the mesh look a lot more natural. Like right here, no need to just leave it connected like that. Inset and extrude, and if you need to, you know, change the form a bit. You could perhaps move it down or whatever. It just looks a lot more natural this way. It looks more connected. And also, these pipes here are a bit too low resolution. I would recommend pressing Control 1 or Control 2 to smooth them out with a subsurf, so whatever you want, and that'll just make it look a bit more smooth. Now for the bottom here, I really like what you did on this one. If you do a concept render with this guy, I think this would look really cool having a flame come out of it, whether you do that in post or some sort of simulation in Blender, whatever you choose to do. This will look really nice with some fire under it, so don't forget about that. So great work, and if there's anything I want you to take from this video, it's focus a lot more on form and less on detail. This is a common pitfall people run into. They tend to make up for a lack of form by overdoing it with detail that doesn't necessarily make too much sense. So remember, detail is there for detail, right? Form is the first thing you want to make it look cool and make it make sense. So that's all I'd really recommend. Next time, focus a bit more on your form, maybe do some research into some more modern type of rockets, formulate your design to something similar, and then you can do details at the final stage once you have the form set up. So this submission is by Fadhly. He did this little turret thing, and just right off the bat I want to say this is a really nice render. I do have a few critiques I want to give out, and you can take it for what it's worth, but I do want to say off the bat, you did a really nice job here. Not to mention, he said this was his first model done in Blender, so for being your first one, I'm heavily impressed by this. Good job. Before we cover the render, I want to cover the model first, just because that's more of my territory, and I can probably jump more. Oops, I have two files open. I can probably jump more into the render critique if I first do the model. So what we're going to do here is just, hop right into it, take a look. Looks like you have this border. Let me press Control Alt. Oops. What was it? Alt 0? No. Control Alt B. There we go. Control B for the render region. Control Alt B for getting rid of it. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at this model here. First off, you did a real nice job here with the use of your bevels and weighted normals, especially for this being your first one. You seem to know what you were doing pretty well, so props to you for using the bevel. And honestly, right off the bat, I don't really see any shading artifacts with this thing. I don't know about this one yet, but you did a really nice job getting rid of those shading artifacts. If I see any, I'll probably point it out, but honestly, I don't right now. And yeah, so good job with that. Now I do want to pick apart this piece here, and I'm not sure if this was done by accident or you did this intentionally, but you're missing a bevel here, kind of obvious, right? So I'm going to assume it was an accident because you have bevels everywhere else, so no need to not have one here. So what you could actually do is go up here to Edit and then Preferences, and under the Add-ons panel, type in Copy Attributes. Oops, Copy Attributes, turn that on. Save your preferences, and you can actually select the pieces that don't have a bevel, shift click on the one that does have a bevel, we'll press Control C, copy selected modifiers, and we'll do the bevel, weighted normal, and you're going to see we have one there now. Now it might be a little bit too big based off the size, so we could just go in here, hold shift, and drop the offset just a bit like that. You're going to also see we kind of have this unevenness around the bevel here. I don't know if you can kind of see that. It's kind of uneven. To fix that, we can actually turn off under geometry in the bevel modifier, turn off the loop slide option, and that'll actually make it more consistent. This basically prioritizes the averaging of the bevels over the natural way the bevel gets connected. I don't really know how to explain it that well, but if you want a perfectly averaged and even bevel, basically you just turn this guy off, and there you go. So we'll just make that one a bit smaller, and then this one looks like it's okay, but we'll probably do like 0.01 on here, and there we go. So quick and easy fix. I'm going to assume you just forgot about that one, so no big deal. Now this piece right here, now depending on the angle you render this, in this case your camera was from like this angle, so you can't really see it, but if you ever do front renders, ideally you're going to want to have this piece kind of masked out. You can kind of see it just floating. So I would recommend, it's a really quick and easy fix, bring this guy back just like that. And if you want to get really technical with it, you could scale it down a bit, duplicate this piece, scale it up, and use this piece as a cutter, meaning we could just remove all these mods here, move this back in, shift click on this piece, and then control minus, and we'll actually have like a hole in there. See what I'm going for? So if you wanted something like that, I'm not gonna actually bother with that, probably a bit overkill because you can't really see it from this area anyways. So yeah, I would definitely recommend at least pushing this back a bit though. Now right here, you definitely need some sort of hole or connection point. I would recommend, instead of cutting a hole in this one, you just union it together. It'll be a quick and easy process. So what I'm going to do is union it. Now before we run a union, if we have a bevel on the piece we're unioning from and the piece that we're unioning to, I can barely pronounce that word, but if both of them have a bevel, you're going to get double bevels, and that's going to overlap. Watch this. I press Control plus. Actually, this one disappeared. We might need to apply some modifiers. I think that's the issue. Let's go ahead and select this piece. We can apply our mirror, this mirror as well. Same for this piece. Let's get rid of the mirrors. I think that was giving an issue. Okay, so what I could do, shift click on this, Control plus, and it's still causing a problem. Let me figure this out. I'm going to go ahead and apply the boolean, just remove the bevel and way to normal. And it's still not working. What's the problem? I'm going to try running a smart apply on this guy and see if this does anything. But there's not really a reason this thing shouldn't run a union properly. Fascinating. Let me just go ahead and try a more manual boolean here. We'll do union and pick this guy. We're going to go ahead and move this up. Okay, something weird was going on. I'm going to guess something with flipped normals right now. Maybe on this piece. Fascinating. This is weird. I'm going to assume it's something with the actual scene in here. Can't quite pinpoint it, but we'll figure it out. So something on the front here is not running the bevel correctly. I think it's an issue with how the boolean's running. Sometimes, how do I explain this? Oh, it's really hard to explain. So whenever you run booleans, I'll try to demonstrate with a separate object actually. We could do like, I don't know, take a cube, and maybe I can actually explain it better this way. I'm gonna make it a bit smaller. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is delete this face, and let's say I went in here and tried to run a circular cut. So maybe we come in here. I'll just use box cutter to speed up the process. So we'll come in and we try to run a difference. Now check this out. If we run this, you're going to see that although we're set to difference, this guy is actually unioning together. It's a really weird issue, and it actually caught me off guard when I was first learning hard surface, but it has to do with how the boolean is calculated. So in this case, check this out. Right now it looks like it's a union, but the moment, if I just take this top piece, the moment this guy hits just at the top above this ridge, it's going to turn into a difference. Watch this right there. There we go. Now it's actually a difference, and we could scale this up and have a proper hole in the bottom. A similar type of calculation is occurring over here, which is why I was having some problems, and I just couldn't quite pinpoint it because it wasn't as obvious, but that's essentially what is happening with this one. So sometimes you might notice that, as a matter of fact, your union isn't really working as you would have expected. But anyways, yeah, that would be my recommended fix. Switch it to difference and it'll basically give you the same effect. We're going to apply the boolean, and we're going to definitely have to recalculate the normals with Shift N because they're flipped, and now it's going to fix. And then we can just drop the bevel just a bit here and turn off our loop slide and drop it a bit more. So see that? Now we have a really nice connection between this part of the turret and this area. You can see a very nice fusion there. A lot better than just a straight up intersection in my opinion. So that's what I do for that one. Also down here, you're missing a bevel. A lot of people, they have really tiny objects and tend to just either one, not add a bevel because they don't think it's necessary, which in my opinion is wrong. Bevel should be dropped everywhere, even if it's very, very tiny. And two, sometimes the tinier objects tend to give more issues, so people are like, I'm just not going to add a bevel at all. So I think that's kind of avoiding the problems more than fixing them. But in this case, I don't think that was your issue. I just think you didn't add it. And I would recommend adding a very, very small hint of bevel, because look at this. Here's the before, before, after, it pops out a bit more. All these small details compound into something bigger, and although it might not seem like a big deal on the surface, if you have, multiple details that don't have a bevel on it, it'll actually make a big difference, and you won't really notice until the model's done. So definitely add in your bevels where you can. Now you're going to see we have another issue right here. See that? Like a weird skew. This is an issue with our loop slide option. We'll just turn that off. And maybe that didn't fix that one, but it fixed this one over here and made it more even. As for this one, if that didn't fix it, it's probably an issue with one of the connection points. So yeah, right here, see this? Connection points like this at the corners are terrible. They cause issues like this all the time. So what we could do instead, if we wanted to keep it non-destructive, we can attempt to come in here and we'll tab into edit mode. Actually, there's way too many booleans to make this easy. I'm just going to go ahead and apply them. We'll run a smart apply. What we're going to do is come in here with a knife cut, press the K key, C to keep it straight, Z to cut through, and then click and press enter. Every boolean cut basically needs 2 connection points, so we have one right here, so now we can probably get in here and dissolve that one out. Maybe we need to do one this direction too. We'll do that. Cut through. And now we have cuts going straight across, so we could probably get in here and dissolve these weird ones out. Maybe we don't even need this one. We'll just get rid of it. You're going to see it's a lot more elegant now, and if we go back to the bevel, it's working as expected now. So those are the only nitpicky things I'd have on the front. If you wanted to be a little bit more technical and make the design pop a bit more, chamfers are super useful design elements. I use chamfers all the time now. I love them. A chamfer is basically a 45-degree bevel, a 1-segment bevel. So what we could do is come in here and chamfer these interior edges here. So I'm going to control click around, and to make this easier we could just press / on the numpad to get into local view. I'm going to go ahead and just continue around, and we're going to press Control B, run a chamfer. Now you're going to see this connection point went crazy. These connection points, you always want them to be orthogonal or perpendicular, otherwise they're going to get overlaps almost immediately. So what I'm going to do is connect it here instead with the J key, and then go into edge mode and press Control X to dissolve that out. Same idea over here, join that up and then Control X to dissolve that out. So I don't know what this is right here. Let me dissolve those out. Don't need those. Okay, so now if we go around and try to chamfer this, you're going to see it does a nice chamfer with no issues. We're going to do a really small one though. And we don't need these edges either. Not sure what these are doing. We'll dissolve out what we can, I guess. Try this one more time. Control B. And now check this out. This looks a lot more profound now. So definitely try running chamfers wherever you can. They tend to make the model a bit more robust and just look nicer. So let's go ahead and move on. This caging effect is really nice. I don't really have any complaints here. I really like that. I especially like the lighting you did on the inside, especially if we take a look at the render, you can see it has this more visually appealing effect when we have these lights kind of coming through these little vent units or whatever you want to call them. So yeah, no real complaints on that one. Honestly, the rest of this mesh is just really well done. No artifacts or anything crazy. You did a great job dealing with that and making sure those weren't problematic here. Really good connection points. Everything is holding up well. So I can tell that you knew what you were doing topology wise, and over here you may have just forgotten about that area. No big deal. If you want to make this even more visually appealing, what I would recommend doing is we'll come in here and apply these booleans if we need to. Yeah, we probably do. I think you ran a slice here. What I would recommend doing is maybe come around to these areas and chamfer them. Just a small little chamfer like that to make a notch, and this might make it pop a bit more, as you can see. Up to you though, not sure if that's your type of style, but I definitely like it. Same for this piece, perhaps a chamfer would do well here. We're just going to have to reroute these connections, so we'll do that. And then let's try to get this area. Do like a small little chamfer right there, why not? Probably a bit too small. There we go. Everything else around here really well done, especially for one of your first models, so I can see you have a very, very bright future with modeling because this is actually really good. So honestly, not too many complaints. There's literally no visual artifacts or shading issues I see, and those are usually the first things I see when people submit. So big props to you, man. You did a great job on this, especially these little small details here. I love this. Nice little connection points going in. Overall, you just really thought this design out, and I like it. Definitely something more for the sci-fi genre, I'd say, just because, you know, because of the lights, this piece in the back, just the sci-fi looking themes. So a bit less realistic and a bit more sci-fi-ish, which is my style anyways, so I'm definitely a fan. You could probably spice up the top a bit as well by maybe making some more designs or cuts or indents or whatever. And this is just me being really picky and trying to find something you could add. So you could come around here maybe and do like a small chamfer. Just something, you know, you could do anything really, it's all up to you. Just kind of some thoughts I have rolling around in my head that you might enjoy. So great job with this. I genuinely don't think I have any big critiques. Now right here, I think it was just, okay. One thing I did notice was this. This is problematic. So I can tell you were trying to kind of cheat the system here to fix up the shading, and you got kind of close to a good result, but not quite what I would have went for. So first of all, this right here is killing the curvature, and you can see that visually. I'm not sure if you can see it in YouTube's compression, but see that very visible line? This is obvious. If we go into matte cap, you might see it better. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. I thought we could see it better, but it's not really picking up. But there's definitely this flat area right here. You always want to retain your curvature. This might have been dissolved by accident, it looks like it. So fortunately we could come in here and just kind of cheat the system a bit. And where's that loop cut? I know I just added it in. Oh, I was just in the wrong side. Okay, so what we're going to do, isolate the view, hop into the side. What we could do is simply add that loop cut in and move it up just a bit to kind of cheat the system, but we have a mirror, so maybe it needs to go on this side instead. Just kind of pull that up, and that should get the job done quite well. And now it's not really obvious. And as for these knife cuts you did here, if we go and take a look, I guess it works, but it's not ideal. I would have recommended, instead of doing it this way, keeping your loop cuts flowing through properly, and just have ran a boolean instead. You could have used a normal transfer or perhaps just isolated the shading. So next time I would opt for an actual boolean through here, and then you could just do a normal transfer. Let me do it on this one. I keep forgetting you have the mirror on this. So yeah, next time just feel free to run a boolean. Get it in a more practical location, you know, in between two edges to assist the shading a bit. And then you could use perhaps a normal transfer or simply isolate the shading. I think that would be a better solution than what you did here. And also we could probably connect this one up and this one as well, like that. And you could probably help assist these guys a bit by connecting this area if you really wanted to get picky with it, but this one's already kind of jumbled, so there's not too much we can do to save it, but it's not really a huge deal. The render looked fine, and there's not really any terrible shading errors I can see. Maybe if you get it from an angle like that, you can kind of see some issues, but you know, it's not horrible. Just next time, definitely try to approach that a bit differently, maybe with a normal transfer. I have videos on my YouTube for that as well. And you know what? I'll just go ahead and demonstrate real quick how you could just achieve that. So what we could do is come in here. Let's add in the cylinder. I'm not sure how many vertices this guy has. I'm gonna guess 64. Okay, add it in the cylinder. Let me find it. Let me move the 3D cursor over here. Isolate this, and we'll add in a cylinder. We'll do 64 vertices. What we could do, shade it smooth, and then turn on auto smooth, or you could just sharpen it if you have hard ops. I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees. We're going to scale it to be about the same size, right? We're going to make it just outside of that range there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is rename this piece to, let me find it first, I don't know where it is. We'll just name it to N transfer for normal transfer. And then we can hide this, we don't need it in the scene anymore, so make sure you hide it and don't delete it. What we can do is come around to these edges here. We'll just control click around like this. What am I missing? Is there another one? Let me turn off the bevel for a second. Okay, what I would recommend doing is come in here with a bevel, run a few here like that. Unfortunately, we have to do this more destructively, and then after that what we can do is simply select the areas with bad shading around it. You can kind of see it here, it's visual. We're going to select all the areas around here. Easiest way to do that is to alt click on one of these bevels here and press Control plus a few times like that, and then alt shift click to deselect the bevels here. We don't want those selected. And then we're going to assign this to a vertex group, so go to this panel, assign it, deselect, and then select to make sure it has been assigned. And then finally what we're going to do is add a data transfer modifier here. We're going to turn on that bevel again, that's fine. We're going to add a data transfer modifier. We're going to go to this vertex group, so it's going to affect only those vertices, those faces or whatever. And then we're going to go ahead, and the source is going to be the normal transfer here. So what we're doing is transferring the perfect shaded cylinder, the normal transfer cylinder, over to this one with bad shading. So we're going to go here to face corner data, turn that on, click the drop down, go to custom normals. We're going to go to projected face interpolated and check that out. There we go, perfect shading, no problems. Now you have to make sure that normal transfer object, this one right here, this cylinder, has to be perfectly overlaying the area with issues. If this is scaled down and too small, you're going to see that's not going to do a very good job at all. I guess I need to go smaller, but yeah, in this case actually working okay. But depending on how this is oriented, it can actually cause more problems than good. Like around here is getting tricky, getting messed up. So basically just make sure this is overlaid perfectly where you want it to be. You might have to tweak it a bit. So yeah, there we go. Now we have perfect shading on that one, and that's an easy fix as well. Okay, so that's about it for the model. Really nice job once again, man. There weren't too many things to pick apart, but there were a few I definitely needed to point out like we showed here. So I'm going to go ahead and discuss this this example now. Now, really good render. I like the lighting, I like the composition. Few things I don't like though. First of all, this is too congested right here. There's not much breathing room between the end of this turret and the beginning. You can kind of see it's almost cut off. I would recommend giving maybe like an extra inch of space or so and pull this back to the right a bit. Maybe just move the camera a little bit. What you could actually do is move the camera to the left a bit and then zoom it out just a bit with the focal length, and that would probably get a much better position, and you know, it would look better, less congested over here. Next thing, if we zoom in, we have these weird visual artifacts right here. Not sure where these came from. I'm going to assume maybe something with your topology, or maybe you had like a duplicate piece that popped in, or I really don't know what this could be, because this is your render, right? But it looks like there might be an overlap, so make sure all your backups are turned off in rendered view. Otherwise you might get these weird overlaps going on like this. Next thing, this caution hot symbol is way too bright. I would dim it down, maybe, you know, turn down the not the roughness values, but the brightness or color values. Just make it a bit more in the silver or grayish areas so it's not as apparent. If you were to zoom this thing out, I don't think I can do it in this app here, but yeah, if you were to zoom this thing out really far, probably most of your attention is going to immediately focus on this area because it's super bright, it's a bright spot, and naturally your attention is going to focus there immediately. And these decals on the floor here, I think you said use decal machine. Go to the match button in decal machine, swap that white to a different material so that way it doesn't stand out. I really don't like the white borders on here, it doesn't match at all. So basically switch these white ones to a different material, maybe match the gray floor here. It should allow you to do that. If it's a subset decal, you just shift click, you press the D key and then shift and scroll, and it'll let you switch through on the secondary material. Also, for your floor here, it kind of just drops down out of nowhere. There's like an infinite void and there's an edge. I would recommend maybe instead of having that, put a backdrop instead in this little area of void of nothingness. Put a backdrop, maybe make it, you know, a little bit rough, a little bit dim, and that's also just going to make it pop a bit more in the background, and more of the focus is going to be brought here to this piece. overall, man, I'm really happy with what you did for your first result. Very impressed. It's a really nice job here. You did pretty much everything as I would have suggested you to do, minus the few things I wanted to point out here. So hopefully this helped you out, and yeah, hopefully submit something else next month for us to review.
Hi guys, Siri here, and let's talk about this critique submission from Parallax, which is bloody amazing. So I really enjoy this one specifically. I really enjoy the concept. This is a very good example of a concept design, because you couldn't put this model in game. You know, it has a few issues, but as a concept design, this is really really cool idea, and it's actually really interesting to look at the file to understand how it works. But anyway, let's talk about the renders first, okay? So there are a few things I want to point out, and a few things that I really like, and a few things that I would do a bit differently. But again, this is personal, you know, personal thing, so bear with me. So first of all, let's talk about this one, okay? This one is a little bit too dark, and if you compare these two images, this one is actually has a far better lighting. In fact, lighting and you know, the composition of shadows and light in this one, in my opinion, is actually perfect or close to it, okay? The only thing I don't like in here is this reflection here. Let me just change my pen to something crazy. This one, it pulls really a lot of attention, and there's a lot of dark areas here, there's a lot of contrast, and this is gonna pull attention down. So I would either dim it down or duplicate it to this side as well, okay? So this could, you know, this could help if you duplicate it to this side, okay? It would look probably a little bit better. So if I grab this one and went to, just let me just put my mic a little bit differently so I can use my tablet. It's so difficult to use my tablet with this mic in front of me. There you go. So if I, you know, drop this here, and maybe preferably with something a bit stronger, you know, and change the blend mode to color dodge, and make this brush a bit bigger, and not this one, my brush, there we go, my brush a bit bigger, and tap this, and, you know, color dodge again, something like that. So, you know, you get the idea, but it would be a little bit more, you know, controlled situation, if you will, okay? But anyway, this is a really cool image. Now, the only thing I would change in terms of design or composition is I would actually lift this vehicle a little bit up, okay? In my opinion, it's a little bit too low, and I'll tell you why. So let me just grab another brush. The yellow one is probably the best, okay? Oh, I need some layer here. There you go. So if it was me, right, I would put this vehicle somewhere, well, maybe somewhere here, so these tires are not being cut off. There's nothing wrong with cutting off things in frame, but if you look at this image, right, more than half of this image is not the truck, which is, or the car, the buggy, which is fine. But the problem is that the image sinks down. It kind of has this feeling that, you know, something is missing visually. It's just you know, it's incomplete, as if it was cut too abruptly. If there was a bit of a more data in here, I think it would look more, you know, more interesting, and you could zoom it in a bit more. But then you would lose this effect in the back, which is brilliant, right? So I don't know, I think I would just position my camera slightly, maybe differently, or simply, you know, move this buggy just a little bit, you know, up, maybe, you know, maybe this much, yeah, literally, you know, from here to here, okay, just or even here, just a little bit, yeah, tiny bit. I think it would look a bit better. I would need to re-render the whole image to, you know, to do this, so I'm not gonna be doing that, but that's what I would do. Now, what I really like about it is the idea of this, you know, of these decals, and that's actually pretty brilliant. I haven't thought about it, but when I look at the Blender file, what it did is pretty clever. Let me just fix these windows. I cannot work like this. That's just too much mess. There you go. So Alt Z, and let me show you. So these are right. These are all decals, and what Parallax did is simply use decals to create this kind of like a perspective tunnel for this buggy, you know, which is genius, you know. That's really clever. So I really like that. So you don't have to do it in Photoshop; you just do it in here, you know. But anyway, so that's, you know, so that's my my take on this image. Now, this image, you didn't change the light, did you? You just stayed with the same light, and I think that's the problem, because lighting in here is far more interesting and dramatic than here. Here, the image loses the drama and the impact of this image. Okay, it's a very different image, but there's no separation, because you see the light here in the back separates all this silhouette from the background and gives all these highlights. You know, you got some light here, probably from the top, I'm guessing, because you know, I can see the highlights in here. So maybe it's from the top, or maybe it's somewhere from the you know, from an angle from the top like this or something like that. But you know, I don't think the lighting has changed here, but the camera angle has changed, and that caused the lighting to shift. Okay, and you lose this separation. You know, all these dark elements here, they lack separation. So if I was, you know, doing this, I probably would put some light behind this buggy and make it just split from the background, so kind of like a headlight, or put a light from over there, you know, somewhere from the top, or even from here, or even two lights, you know, from behind, so to separate it, right? That's one. Two, you got all these decals, right, and they kind of blurry, right? But the car is actually immobile, and that's creates a disconnection between you know, these slightly motion blurred decals, because I think the motion blurred slightly, not much, but slightly, and this one is completely you know, still. So that for me doesn't make much sense. Also, these are way too bright. Okay, these you know, these three, right? They're way too bright. I mean, the car is, I think, casting shadows in here, and there's no, you see a bit of a shadow here, there's no shadow in here. So what you should have done is, I think, bring this one into Photoshop and put it manually and darken it down, or grab some maybe you know, grab the curves, right, and bring it down, right, this one, and simply invert it, and, you know, where is my brush, switch it to white, and brush, and simply darken it down, you see. And then when you darken it down, you simply remove this one, double click in here, you remove this one from the darker areas, right? So let's remove it from, you know, from the surrounding area here, and now you see you got a little bit of a darker triangles, and they not pull so much attention, because this thing really pulls attention. There's no need to look in here. This is supposed to be just a framing, not the main feature. It is supposed to correspond with the color and tonality of these. So I would simply copy from here to there, right? So I would copy the tonality and color from here to here, and literally cover it up, or, you know, maybe even grab this one and extend it and sort of remodel it to the shape of this one. Okay, so cut it with a pen tool, move it, and, you know, do it manually, these three, because it's not too much work, but this would improve. And I remove this shadow because it really annoys me, right? And other than that, I think it's cool. This light is you know, sort of spilling in. I would just remove it as well. I think it would look better if you just removed it. So if you did something like this, maybe, you know, see what I mean? I think it just look much better, right? There you go, see what I mean? It's just this is unnecessary in here. So that's cool. This one I'm not sure about. This beam, this is probably you know, a cone light, or whatever it's called, spotlight, right? It's going through volumetrics, that's why I have this effect. I'll probably custom from the top, would be a bit more dramatic, because something coming from the back, it just looks a bit weird. I'll just cast it from here. So, you know, let's go back with my brush again. Like I said, I would do something like this probably, right, to separate it from the background. And, you know, this wheel is extremely bright, and it just pulls the whole attention. Remember that attention is gonna go always to points of contrast. If I zoom it out, look where the attention goes. Attention goes to the top rim and the front. You see that now? So always have to zoom out your image, and then you'll see where the attention goes. You need to remove the attention from these parts and move it to the whole car, because it's important. You will get it by simply adding rim around it, okay? So you need to reset your lights, and that's why I move lights for every single render that I create. If I create a new render from a new angle, I change all the lights. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but you get effects, okay? You get results, right? Now this render, apart from the fact that I think this truck is a bit too low, that's brilliant. Yeah, I love everything about this thing, and in this bit here, that's the only thing that annoys me, but the rest of it is really cool, right? Now let's talk about the design. The design of the buggy itself, right, is, in my opinion, really awesome, right? It's just great. Let's just remove all this junk from this scene. So let me see this. There we go. Remove all this garbage and all these lights and everything. Just let's hide it so we can talk about. I can talk about the truck. Yeah, there you go, and these ones too, right? Good. So let's look at this. Let's look at this in a solid mode. So you can see the design is really awesome. Let's grab a cavity so you're gonna see it better. The design is brilliant. Look at the silhouette. It's just so well balanced, right? It's really cool, and it looks great from every angle, which is fantastic. Also, in addition to all this, you can drop a sub D on these parts, right? Some of them you cannot select them, so we need to enable selection in some of these parts. Yes, so now you can drop a Control 2 on this one. You got the sub D version. I think that's why he did that. It's because it's a quad modeling in here, right? Everything and most of it is in quad. Now what I don't like about this is that you could be a bit more precise with your modeling in terms of because there's a lot of shading issues. Some of this can be fixed with weighted normals like here, but some of it can't, and that's that should be fixed. Okay, this is probably mirrored. There you go. Some of this should be basically worked on, right? So these tiny details, they will pop in rendering, maybe not in the type of a render you are doing, but because of these issues here, right, like a mesh overlapping in all these holes and stuff, you are unable to, for example, create as zoomed in kind of shots like this in a different lighting conditions. So you're limiting yourself to very, very dark light and sort of like dark colors, right? So that's the problem. You see, there's a lot of shading issues, right? A lot, and like I said, some of them can be fixed with weighted normals, but others, they can't because of they lack sharp edges or other problems, right? So there you go. Though, like I said, the design itself, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's I love it. It's really cool. But these details, that's what just breaks it for me, right? So I'm a stickler for details, So I like all this stuff to be properly finished. Also, the design of the glass. I mean, you do have a tiny gap in here, but unless this guy's a robot, the visibility is severely limited by these beams, right, by these spokes. So as it looks badass, but from the design perspective, that makes little sense unless you got some kind of screens or whatever that displays all the information, but even the interior there's something inside which is pretty cool. They're all decals, it's all smokes and mirrors, but it looks pretty cool in the render. So this is a great example, like I said, of of concepting. So if you draft a really cool concept, that's a pretty cool way of going about it. But you see, if I zoom closely like this and I wanted to shoot a picture, right, render, you see these bits, all this stuff, the floaters, right? They all will ruin the shading, right? And you can see the shading breaks in here because you got overlapping elements or some other issues. So all these things will need to be fixed, you know, like all this rubbish here. Yeah, it just looks awful, and this should be really fixed because shading completely breaks in here. So the design idea, brilliant. Execution could be a bit better, yeah, could be a bit better. But to be honest, modeling part usually is just a matter of time, and you know, if you spend some time on it, you can fix this. But the designing is a far more difficult thing to master, and you know, Parallax has some praise. If this is your original idea, that's, you know, that's awesome, right? That's bloody awesome. So you know, that's my take on it. I think. So how would I, you know, basically render this thing if I was, I'm not gonna be rendering it, but you know, I would show you, for example, maybe some camera angles if I was doing this. You know, like what let me go back to this picture in here. What I also like about it, another thing, is that there's a slight Dutch angle to it, and Dutch angle basically is a slight tilt of a camera, so that you can see that the car is not straight on the road, but the road is tilted, and that's called Dutch angle, which adds dynamism and drama, and you know, this really fits to this whole image, right? I'm guessing you did all the blurs in Photoshop, because I can see that the blur actually lifts the edge of the tire up, meaning this was probably done in Photoshop with a Gaussian blur, or maybe even motion. I think it's a Gaussian blur. But yeah, so I think I have a PSD here, so I can actually have a look. Camera 1, camera 2. Yeah, I'm interested in camera 1. Let me see this. Oh, I cannot see. Just there is a correction. Oh, it's just yeah, there you go. So there's probably that's a raw render, right? Yeah, so see, if I was rendering this, right, I would lift it just a little bit up. Maybe if you did that, you would need to maybe increase camera angle a little bit. I mean, drop it down so to make it a bit more wide angle, so it becomes more dramatic. I don't know, I would need to fiddle with it, but you know, the finish is pretty cool. I think you use this plugin, what is it called? I forgot the name of it. There's a really new cool plugin for adding light effects in Photoshop. It costs like 100, I think 19 bucks or something, but I think it's really worth it. I'm pretty sure you use this one, because it looks like it was done with this plugin. I can't remember the name. But anyway, Parallax will tell you in comments for sure. So, you know, if you're into Photoshop compositing, get it, because that's just genius plugin. You know, you can do all these stuff, all these things in Photoshop, you know, all these reflections here. It's all done in Photoshop. That's why, you know, that's why post-processing is so important. You can see the difference between this and this. It's massive, right? That's a, you know, production value, a production level, you know, kind of render for a movie poster or something, and this is, you know, just a render, right? So okay, so now let me see this. This is a camera. I don't think this is a camera you shot. Oh yeah, there we go, that's the camera. So now you caught these tires like this, right, in here, and I think this would look better if we let's just remodel this I mean, remove this camera slightly to what I think would be better, right? So let's move this camera slightly lower, right? Let's just assign this camera to lock camera to view. So let's move this camera slightly lower. Now, when I move my camera slightly lower, I will lose a little bit of this angle here. So I need to tilt my camera up again, see, like this, and then I can move it slightly lower. And I think this would be, you know, far more impactful image, like this, okay? Because you give a little bit of a buffer here, okay? And you actually put this truck in the main spot. I don't know if you render it with cycles, with Eevee, so I'll tell you what, let's render this image, right? So this Dutch angle is a little bit too strong, so we're gonna manipulate with it a little bit. And we could cut this tire just a bit, but not too much, yeah, not too much. Let's drop this camera a little bit lower, so it's a bit more aggressive, kind of like this. Maybe even a bit from the side. This could be interesting. Let's tilt it a bit more. So select the camera. tilt it a bit more and try this one. So you see now, if I render this way, I have no idea what are the settings here in this Blender, so I need to go deep into settings and see what's up. But I'm just gonna render it really quickly. But the point is that, like I said, I want to move this car a little bit up and, you know, make it more important in the scene. Right, make it more of a main subject rather than just a filler for all the stickers around, you know. That's the idea behind it. So anyway, let's wait for the render. It's going to take a while because it's a lot of volumetrics and data reflections, information, lights, etc. Might take a bit. Yeah, so there you go. See, I will need to manipulate with lights, but basically this truck now becomes a bit more important in the image. The tires are still being cut, but you know, it just becomes a bit more of a vital part of the image, right? So the angle, like I said, I will need to work with all these lights, probably move this one somewhere here, because these were all placed manually in specific spots. This one should be moved outside or probably removed because it's gonna cause issues. So you know, also there are lights inside of these beams that should be readjusted as well. So there's be probably a lot of work with lights, but we mainly talk about the composition, but you get the point, right? So just, you know, I would probably change this this camera settings a little bit, maybe even get a little bit more close, just a little bit, maybe even, you know, move it a little bit here, so even more from the angle like this, right? Maybe, you know, something like this. So the truck is really, you know, a part of it. Now, this image would work if you had some kind of, I don't know, a promotional text in here, and, you know, some kind of information, or I don't know, game name or whatnot, a movie name or something, some important info in here that will balance or sort of complement this car, yeah. Otherwise it's just a little bit like a shoved in the corner. But the idea, you know, of this light behind it, the perspective and all this thing, this is like really, I love it, you know. The way you created the image is just brilliant, you know. Especially with those decals. That's actually a genius idea. You guys should, you know, bring this idea out of this this critique, because these decals on sides and everywhere, that's just fantastic idea to create this kind of like an illusion of like a perspective corridor motion, and, you know, because they are very strong leading lines, right? They create a framing for this whole image. Without these, it would be a little bit bleak. So this stickers around the essential to the framing of this image. And, you know, just like I said, I would just lift it tiny bit up. Kind of feels like it's a little bit too low, you know, but that's literally the only and the light here, right? That's like the only two things that I noticed about this image. Well, I think that would be it, you know. And again, I think it's important to you know, when you create something, to try to make sure that the shading actually holds on every single element, so all these overlaps, you know, are taken care of, right? Because, like I said, for creating a concept image, this might be okay, but, you know, SX and scaling this a little bit in or something, or it's even not that, they just basically, it's a slush, so you will need to, you know, sort of merge them together somewhat, because they just don't look like they could work together. This is kind of like a bit of an overlapping jungle in here, right? And again, the shading breaks all over the place, so this really should be fixed. And I can see that you can control shading very well, because, you know, this piece, by the way, that's all quad geo, right? So it's quad geo, this is deformed and then sub-deed. So, you know, you do know how to do it. It's just that probably you decided that, I'm guessing what happens, that, you know, you knew what you're gonna do with the image, and you decided that it's not needed, but you know, you got all these little bits here, you know, sticking out, and I don't know, it's just, for me, I couldn't live with this, you know, like it was just annoying me. I'm OCD for this kind of shit. So but yeah, but the concept is, if it's your original concept, that's just genius. Yeah, it's brilliant. I love it. Love this idea. Really cool truck. Yeah, this could be a fantastic game asset, you know, for like a racing game or something. Looks great from any angle, you know. This is important, guys. So when you create a model, right? Let me just hide all this junk because it's confusing. Yeah, when you create a model, it should look really really interesting from any angle. So if you look from any angle at this truck, you know, it doesn't matter where you look at it, right? It looks pleasing. There's a balance to it. There's, you know, it makes sense from the top, bottom, front, you know, perspective, orthographic. It doesn't really matter. It just looks decent. But then again, like I said, you can see through stuff in here. So I don't know if I hit it, or it was just, I think I've hit it by mistake. Alt H. Yeah, I've just hit it. That's okay. But anyway, you know, that's it for this critique. I think fantastic job, mate. This is like a massive step up from the previous one I've seen from you. Although the render for the last one is also very good, but this is, you know, this is portfolio level stuff here. This is like really cool. I really like it. So anyway, that's it for this video, guys. Hope you learned something useful. Thanks so much for sending your stuff again, Parallax. You know, I love your design, so this is really cool. Another thing that I really like about it, just one more thing I want to mention, is that this badge, it's actually really standing out. It is pretty cool because it pulls a lot of attention to the front and balances really nicely with the lights. This is actually a really nice touch. I don't know if it's an accident or intentional, but this standing out is a really cool touch. You know, if you look at this lighting in this one, it's really good. You got these reflections here balancing itself, you know, so you can see how many lights are in the scene, right? And this is a very meticulous light setup. But like I said, if you want to create another you know, shot, you really need to move those lights about. There's just no way around it, right? You can't just, you know, get lazy. And I bet this was your second shot, right? This was the first shot and this was the second shot. So you know, move the lights and make it awesome. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Catch you next video. Hey guys, Rue here with another critique video, and these are works sent by James the Back. So thank you, James, for submissions. Really appreciate it, mate. Now, there are a few things I would like to mention looking at these images. We received 17 images. And the first thing, this is not the way you want to submit works for critiques. What you want to do is critique them yourself first, okay? The only reason why I actually took these 17 images and I'm talking about them, because it's way too many, right? It's because I want to make a point. So you should pick one image from each of these 4 objects, and then pick 2 best ones out of all these 4, you know, objects, right? So first of all, you select 4 pictures from this 17, so 1 for each model, and then you pick 2 best ones out of these, and that's what you want to send, okay? You need to learn how to critique your own works first, otherwise you will not learn. You need to sit down and think which one is the best image that you are sending. You cannot just, you know, render everything and send a batch, because that literally teaches you nothing, okay? If I were you and I was trying to pick images, I'll show you guys how would I do it, okay? Let's take this one, for example. And let me see. Well, this one, for example, is a gunner, right? It's just way too dark. I can't see anything. The angle is a bit off because, you know, lighting is here and lighting is here, and the main object is dark. So if I zoom it really far away, you'll just see the dots, you know, and that's it. So what I would do is just delete it, right? That's gone. This one is decent. Yeah, this is probably the best one out of all of these that you have here. See, this one is too dark again. So, you know, gone, right? And this one is pitch black, you know, you don't want something like that, okay? And this one is a bit boring. It's not as interesting in this one because this one shows form a bit better because it's a bit, you know, it's a bit angled. You can see everything very clearly, so it's really good. So I think this one is better than this one. So this one, you know, I'm just gonna delete it. Right, so I'm left with this one, okay? So I got one image that's left, okay? So now let's talk about these, right? Let me see. This one is way too dark. It shows details, right? It's pretty cool. It shows details, but it's way too dark. You need to start putting either more light, okay? Or simply be careful when you edit in Photoshop, if you did edit this in Photoshop. And I think you did, but, you know, hard to say, to be honest. You need to lift the light because it's way too dark. Also, the background, the horizon line, try to remove it by either extending the floor or trying to create some kind of a very smooth transition, because this edge, you know, going across this object looks a bit off, you know. It's kind of eye-poking, okay? So see, like here you got this perfect smooth background. Something like this is pretty cool. This image is not bad actually. This one is actually not bad. I think probably this one's gonna be the one's gonna get picked. So this one I'll simply remove it. Yeah, this one shows some interesting details too, but you know, again, you got these distracting lines in here. So what you could do is just render it without any background and simply put a background in Photoshop, which is easy, right? And again, image is way too dark. Yeah, it's way too dark. So I'm gonna remove it. Yeah, same with this one. This one is simply too far, okay? And the light is just is a bit off because you got light on the left side, but you know, the main object is just dark. So the light coming from left to right is correct. That's cool because it's gonna push the form, and you'll be able to see shadows and highlights much better. But you need to be able to see something, you know, in the image, something that's important, and important are details, okay? So, you know, I probably prefer this one, okay? The previous one, this, yeah. So this one again, you know, background, yeah. It just doesn't look pleasing. It looks like something put in a very small room or a cube. You want to make background something that assists the object, not pulls attention away from it, if it makes any sense, okay? This is a good perspective, by the way. I think it's actually even better than this one, but it's just too dark, you see? So if this was brighter and the background was better and the image was a little bit closer, okay? So maybe something like this, yeah? And maybe a bit lower, like that. This would be pretty good, yeah? So something like this, okay? Preferably, yeah. But you know, brighter, because it's really too dark, yeah? So I'm just gonna delete that, okay? So we're left with this one, right? So we got two images left, and this one is really too dark, but you know, it's not as dark as the other ones, and you can see some interesting details. So this one is pretty cool. The most interesting of all of them is this one, but it's really dark. But I think I'm gonna go with this one because this one actually shows a decent form. Also, this one doesn't show any distortions that you have on the mesh, caused by lack of weighted normals, because you can see here clear pulls on the mesh. So it's either lack of weighted normals or simply you need to perform a better job at cleaning your mesh. You got edges coming from the corner, and that's what's pulling this. You need to create like a parameter loop, remove the edges from here so they do not connect to a corner. If you don't know how to solve topology issues, get our topology handbook, you know, BlenderBros topology handbook, and this will teach you how to solve these kind of problems, okay? So I will remove all these because they're just not as interesting. You know, this one looks like someone was shooting something with a camera laying on the floor. It's just not, the angle is just a bit off here, yeah? This one is the same problem, you know. I just don't see it being too pleasing, yeah? All these, yeah, this one is interesting, you see. This one isn't, because you go into the level of an object, right? You're going down to the level of an object really close to the floor, and that makes really this, you know, all these features stand out. So I'll probably pick up you know, this item. The horizon here is not as annoying as in the other pictures, and it's also in the 1/3 of the image. So that's actually okay. I would maybe make this transition a bit more smooth. So maybe you can put some bevel in here and bevel this edge, and it's gonna be like a, you know, smooth gradient going through this object. But you know, it's not as bad as the previous one. So I'm gonna keep this one, right? Now this cube, let's see which one is the best. Well, the best one again is I think is this one, although the lighting is slightly better in this one, in terms of brightness, not in terms of angle, because lighting actually is pretty decent in this one, okay? But it's again way too dark, yeah? The background is great. I think you were using rubber from Keytops, right? Because it looks like rubber from Keytops on the floor. But anyway, this is pretty decent, but again it's too dark, yeah? And you have it so dark because the floor is black, and black doesn't reflect light. If the floor was white, you would have image, you know, much brighter image, yeah? So play with the brightness of the background as well, because this black floor will soak all the light, yeah? So you need to pump more light, more ambient light, meaning there needs to be more light in a scene. If you're using add-ons, and I can see that you're using add-ons, get the Photographer 3. There's a new version 3.5, and you can adjust the exposure value for the entire image. So instead of changing the value of the HDRI, you can actually increase the exposure through Photographer. So that's a very handy feature. So I'm gonna pick, pick the, see again here, issues, and that's a lack of weighted normals because it's a flat surface, right? So there's no way you should be getting any pulls even if the geometry was bad. So the reason here that you got these lines, you need to start applying weighted normals to your object, okay? So weighted normals modifier, which is, by the way, alt click on sharpen in hard ops. So I'm gonna probably go with this one, and you cannot see these distortions here as well, so they're on this side, right? So that's the one I'm gonna go with, okay? Now let me tell you which ones I like the most. This one is good, yeah. This one is decent. So you got a lot of resting space for the eyes to just take it easy. You got a lot of details, and they bunched on the outer edges. And you know, this is a decent design, yeah. I like it. And the render is flat, but it's okay because you can see the details. You know, this could be a decent thumbnail. I would maybe bring it to Photoshop and, you know, work on it a little bit, and play with some values, you know, with contrast, you know, etc. But if you want to bring it to Photoshop, you will need to pump more light into the scene, because you see this edge here is pitch black, yeah, you can't see anything. So again, you have a problem with not enough light, okay? Not enough light in your scenes. You need to work on the lighting. Also, the vignetting. If you're gonna vignette corners, right, you need to vignette them more or less equally. So you see these corners are bright and these ones are dark, which means the heaviness of the image, this whole weight's been pushed to the left side to this area, which is really bright and is brighter than this one. So eye is gonna go first here. You need to think about it, yeah? You need to make, you know, either the background brighter than the object, so it's gonna stand out due to contrast, or you need to redirect more light here, meaning you need to darken this corner down. So again, Photoshop, right? This one is pretty cool, actually. It's a pretty cool design. There's a lot of details on it, and sometimes you need to think if your details, for example, make sense, like this switch here, right? You know, what does it do? You know, it's just you seem to be adding details without giving them much thought, and this is very visible in this cube, right? This cube is has way too many details, okay? This is like you know, it's overloaded with details, and there's no place for the eyes to rest, yeah? It's just nowhere to, you look at it, it's just so busy, it's just, you get tired looking at it. So what you need to do is you need to think about a theme, because just adding details for the sake of adding details is not going to help you create better designs, yeah? You need to think about what you're trying to create, what this object do, you know, what does this object do, what's its in function, right? What it's supposed to represent, because at the moment this is like a demo of decals, right? That's what it is. And even if you create demo of decals, you know, you want to make sure that the placement makes sense, right? So again, you want to give eyes a place of rest, like something that you've done with this. You know, this is a good example of a proper detailing of an object, right? This is, you know, this is done well, yeah. This one is overloaded, so I hope you can see the difference. And again, lighting is the issue, right? So pump more lighting because, you know, you want more lighting in the scene like this, right? And you should be fine. This one the same, you know, it's just too many details. Like, for example, if you remove these, you know, these vents, right? All these vents, and this one as well, it's gonna be already better object. Yeah, so remove this one, remove these two, remove these two, and remove this one, and you will see the difference. Yeah, and then try to re-render it with different lighting. Okay, if you have problems with setting lights, now if you have problems with lighting, go ahead and watch this video I dropped on YouTube. Okay, lighting tutorial for Blender and how to create amazing renders. In this video I discuss lighting and how I set them up. It's a complicated light setup, and you'll understand you know, how to set the lights and how to give them a purpose, because it's really important. You're probably using 1 or 2 lights in here and that's it, right? So it's not enough to light a sphere, because, you know, sphere is round, so you need to have lights from different sides. Yeah. And again, go easy on details, because just, you know, putting details for the sake of details is not going to make you a better modeler. You need to think like you were thinking here. Okay, this is a good model, right? This one is, you know, these two, this one especially, right, are just way too overloaded with details. So that's the problem. And start thinking about, you know, about purpose, or like, know what does it do? Like, is it a drone? You know, is it like kind of a bomb, or some kind of I don't know, you know what I mean? And also when you render something, right, make sure that the sub D is on, or like, you know, because it's a sphere, so you could, I'm guessing what you did, you just added the quad sphere from Hardops. Actually, it's not Hardops, it's Machine Tools. And you know, this sphere is not really that that densely subdivided, so drop a Ctrl+2 and you will see this faceting here on the decals will disappear. Yeah, but you have to reapply the decals again, so you do it before you start applying decals. Yeah, because the decal unfortunately will not I think adjust to the curvature if you make it more smooth. Yeah, but you know, sub D this, yeah, because it's too jaggedy, right? This one is really cool too. I kind of like it. You know, it's it's an interesting device, cool design. Maybe too many details. Yeah, again, too many details. Like you see here, you don't have to put details everywhere. Okay, I think, I'm not sure, but I think that let me see this here. I think there's some shading problem. You need to start adding weighted normals to your object if you're not doing it yet. So I might be wrong, but it could be lighting, but you know, I can see something here. But anyway, this is an interesting design on its own, but I think you overloaded it with details. Okay, so just go easy on details. They do not have to be everywhere. Yeah, that's important. Okay, so if I was sending objects for the critique, yeah, I would send these two. All right, these two. You see what I mean? So not 17 images, but 2 images. Yeah. And this process of elimination of your own work, it's exceptionally important for your improvement. Yeah, because when I render my stuff, you know, or like for example when I was taking images as a photographer, I could go for a session with a model and, you know, take like, let's say 800 images, and I edited maybe 7 or 8. Okay, so you really need to be very harsh on yourself when you choose pictures on your own renders, because that will force you to think in terms of what, you know, which image is the best. Like, is it the good lighting? Is it the good angle? Can I see all the details in the model? Because when you take a picture of a model, like a render, you know, this picture needs to sell it. Okay, so, you know, this wouldn't sell me the cube, right? But this potentially could sell me the style, okay? Because I can see what I'm buying. See what I mean? And I'm not saying buying as in paying for something, but buying also as in, you know, I like it, kind of, I can relate to it, you know what I mean? So this is a very good example of how details should be handled. because you got all these tiny details around. Even there is a lot of them, you know, they bunched up in areas where it's basically area of detail, and I accept that. And then you got mid-sized details, you know, those tiles in the middle, and then it's this massive area of peace and calmness, right? And this is really important, and that's why this model works, even though you have a ton of detail, right? And that's why this doesn't, because you got details everywhere. Okay, so that's, you know, that's how it works. Yeah. So I think these two are the best ones. Yeah, this one is really interesting. I think if I were you, right, I will remove all the decals from this model. Yeah, everything, just remove all the decals and start from scratch. Okay, and try to think this time where to put details and do it again. And you can submit this next month. But, you know, work on this one, remove everything except the geo, of course. Keep the geo, clean the geo up, make sure that there are no shading issues, then put the details, okay? And then, you know, send it over and think about the background, yeah? You know, think about lighting. Like, for example, you got lighting from the top, yeah? But you see the sides here are dark. So you need some light from the side, yeah? Which side? Maybe both, you know? You need to play with light and see. So again, watch this video. This one, right? And maybe it's gonna give you a good idea on, you know, how to set your lights. So you need this. If you're rendering this in cycles, you need this does look like cycles. So I think maybe it's Eevee. Hard to say, to be honest. I think this is cycles. So I presume this is cycles as well. And the shadow on the floor is gone because the light is from the top, you see. So the light probably is at the top because you can see the reflection here and how little shadows is in the bottom. So, and also everything here is dark. So you probably have like one light. So, you know, HDRI light, important, yeah? And then you add lights to it, yeah? So, you know, play with these two. Anyway, hope you know what I'm talking about, and hope it makes sense, yeah? So keep up the good work. This is you know, these two are really nice, yeah? So work on this really, because this one is actually quite complicated in terms of design. And this could, you know, this could be some kind of a piston or like some kind of a, I don't know, some kind of a core in some laboratories, you know, I don't know, tank, whatever. So, you know, part of an engine, right? So this is pretty cool design. But like I said, remove all the decals and start anew, yeah. And it could look really interesting. This decal on the top though is pretty cool. I like this. You know, the top is really nice, yeah. So something like this, you see, you got details in the middle, right, and then you got this peacefulness and calmness around, yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. All right. Okay. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and thank you for sending the images, James. Appreciate it. So that's it, guys, and keep up the good work. Hey guys, Ryu here with another vid, and this one is a critique of work sent by Rogue. And this is actually from the rifle course. That's the rifle I designed for the course, and you know, this is a bloody fantastic job, man, I say. I've been looking at it, and there are a few things that Rogue did differently, like for example this trigger, which is a really cool design as well, because it's actually open in here and the trigger looks also differently, so that's pretty cool. Now if I was, you know, I'm gonna start from the back, so from the materials, okay? So if I was you know, texturing a gun, I would probably go a little bit easier on the grime, because if gun was in this condition, probably wouldn't be shooting anymore. And also decals, yeah? You're using add-ons, so you could grab the Instamat and actually fix all these decals and make them inherit the grime material. So because, you know, they look a little bit too clean for the design, right? So I think these scratches are from a smudger, so you could actually run smudger scratches over it. So, you know, just saying. Same with stickers, you know, you can run dirt and scratches through stickers using Instamat, or smudger as well, if you have these textures, yeah. So this would be my only beef with the texturing, but you know, I kind of like the way it looks. It's kind of, especially this front of the gun looks pretty badass. So I really like it. But if you go to modeling section, right, to you know, solid view, I mean, this is bloody clean, man. It's like, you know, this is really good job. I don't see anything you know, I could complain about, to be honest. Nothing really stands out. There's a bit of a bulging here on this sub D part. You probably run the edges maybe differently or something. So maybe I can't remember how I've done it, to be honest. So we need to look, but it's a bit of a pinching, and I think it's caused by if we're gonna grab this to loco and apply the sub D, right? Apply the bevel in the subdivision, right? So you see see this bunching up of edges. This is what's causing this bulging, yeah, here, right, on the edges. So, but it's, you know, it's not a big deal. It's just pinching here, so this could be probably relaxed a bit. But other than that, you know, I have nothing really to moan about. It's really stellar job, man. Everything looks clean. So on that part, you know, is spot on. And I like, you know, like you see all these cameras that he was trying different views, and this is how it should be done. You know, you should be trying different views and different, you know, ways of actually angling your cameras and sort of playing with different focal length and framings. This framing is a little bit maybe too tight. I'll probably go a little bit further than that. So lock the view and just, you know, just ease off a bit on it like this, right? Or maybe even offset it so it's kind of less space left here and more space left here, just to slightly break the symmetry. You know, but that's probably all I would suggest. And there was also like a plane with smoke in here, but I removed it. So it's just a bit of a smoke that you can see in the render. So that actually is edited in Blender, but I removed it just to, you know, be able to move around this object a bit. I mean, this model a bit easier. Anyway, let's have a look at the the renders. But you know, this one looks bloody clean, man. So fantastic job on this one. Okay, so I dropped them all into one place, and we're gonna look at them, all of them, right? So first of all, this one. Now you use depth of field in here, and I don't think it was a good idea in this case, because if you look at this gun, right, this from more or less from here, if I zoom in, you can probably see this. See, this is already out of focus, right? So basically from this place, right, everything is out of focus, right? So this main part of the gun is out of focus. I think the depth of field could start somewhere on the handle. So watch my video on plane of focus and how it works, because basically I'm just gonna grab it. In fact, I can do it with a mouse. So let's draw it, okay? So I explain. Let's say that you know, this is a gun here, okay? And my camera is here, okay? And I'm shooting this way, right? So if my plane of focus is always gonna be following, okay, the front of the lens, meaning if I'm shooting this way, okay, so my camera is facing this way, my plane of focus is gonna go like this, okay? So if there is a very little focus, okay, you will have basically most of the gun blurry. If you're shooting from the from a side, everything is gonna be in focus because the plane of focus go across the whole item. In this situation, you should probably go a little bit higher on f-stop, okay? So instead of going, I don't know how far you went, I mean, you probably could check. So ST1, right? What's the focus here? 3.6, there you go. And you focus on rifle 6, which is, wait a minute, where is it? Rifle 6. Yeah, you go. You focus on this bit, right? So you basically missed the whole gun in terms of focus, okay? You should have focused somewhere here, okay? In this area. And I would do it manually. So if I were you, what I would do is I would remove the the focus object and literally focus manually by adjusting distance, okay? And focus somewhere here, because the way that area of focus, plane of focus works, okay, is that if my camera is here, right, and my object is here, okay, and then when I use my, you know, my plane of focus and, you know, I mean my aperture, and let's say my aperture is, let's say, I don't know, let's say 4, okay, and I'm focusing on this spot, right? So 1/3 of focus is gonna go this way and 2/3 is gonna go this way. So if you focus on the beginning of the, I mean on the front of the gun, your focus is gonna start falling off in the middle of the gun, and it's exactly what's happening here, right? The focus starts falling off here because you focus on this bit. If you focus on this bit, you'll have this bit in focus and this bit in focus, right? But this f-stop is too small in here. You should be at least 8, okay, or maybe even you know 5.6, maybe 6, okay, something like that, maybe 7. I will need to check to make sure, but it should be much bigger than 3.6 because it's just too shallow. Because you're shooting literally across the whole length of the gun, right? It's not horizontal, so plane of focus always travels with the plane. So for example, in this case, right, you don't need 7. In this case, you could get away with 2. Okay, in this case, right? You could easily go with 2 or even 1.4. Because it's flat, and if you focus manually, so instead of focusing on an item, you'll focus manually on, for example, this screw, right? Make sure it's sharp. And the way I do it, I simply go really close, yeah, like this, okay? I mean really close, and then I focus manually, make sure it's sharp. Then you have a whole gun in focus except for the legs, because legs are a little bit forward, yeah? If you look at the from the top, see, legs are in front of the gun. So you could maybe focus somewhere here even, okay? Because remember, 2/3 in, 1/3 out. So, you know, try something like maybe 2. That should be fine. Because these legs don't really matter, you know, this main gun matters, right? So, it should be the other way around, you know. So 3.6 maybe here, but 7 at least in here, right? So the deeper you go with your object, okay, the more depth of field you will need. That's why it's called depth of field, because it's a field that has a depth, and this field follows the front of the lens. So if the lens moves, right, the field will move. Okay, I have a video on this one, so on my YouTube, that explains it, and it's called something related to blurry images. Just look it up. And that's that. So this is my first problem with this image. Second problem is the lighting, okay? Now you probably did it in cycles, because I don't think this is EV. And if it is EV, well then this could be easily rectified. And what I'm talking about is the light. There is a settings in EV, okay, that allows you to, I think you're rendering in cycles. Yeah, cycles. Wait a minute, this is my, I copied your file to my Blender, so I don't actually know what you rendered in, but I think it's cycles. And if it's not cycles, again, if it's EV, right, what you can do is when you add the light to a scene, okay, so I'm just gonna add the light, right, whichever light, it doesn't really matter, and go to lighting settings under EV, right? And you can set custom distance. I don't know if this is gonna work for the sun, but we're gonna just, for example, use spotlight, right? You see custom distance, and you can actually change it and bring this light up. You see, you can change the depth of the light, meaning if you don't want it to hit the floor, you want to lift it up so it sort of goes onto the object, but it doesn't spill on the floor. And you get a lot of light spill on the floor here, which makes this floor really bright, and it takes away from the image. So what I would do in here, right, is make this floor darker. So it's gonna, instead of reflecting light, it's gonna absorb light, okay? So make this floor darker. And you can easily do this by rendering floor and gun separately. It's gonna be a bit of a bastard to combine the shadows, but you know, it can be done. Or you could simply grab these curves, right, and simply drop the lighting down here and invert the mask, okay, like this, right? And then simply grab a brush and darken down all of it in here, right, like this. Not sure why this one didn't get darkened, but and then simply change the luminosity and remove it from black areas, right, like this, right? It's not gonna be ideal because it's, you know, it's a bit difficult to do it in here, but you get my point. See, it looks a bit better. So it's just too bright, you know. This is way too bright, yeah. So if you render this gun separately, okay, and the floor separately, it's very easy to select the gun and just work on the floor. You know, either change it or just make it darker. Yeah, you know what I mean. So just you could paint it with the gun selected. You invert the selection in Photoshop, and you just paint outside the gun, and you bring it down, or render another floor and overlay it, you know, or something. But it's just way too bright, you know, pulls a bit too much attention. So this is what I would change, yeah. And the depth of field is a bit off. Another thing is that the I'm not quite sure about this angle, unless you're gonna put some text in here. You know, something is missing. A bit of a Dutch angle could fix it. So this gun, instead of going straight, this is why I actually use Dutch angle in my render. Gun should be going a bit like this. Maybe it would help to this diagonal line would just fill this whole image. You see, because at the moment you get a lot of dead space in here, which is not really a problem. But if you zoom it out, you can kind of see that there's a feeling of this image sinking down, and this part becomes irrelevant. You see what I mean? So this feels a bit more like 21 by 9 than 16 by 9. I think it's 16 by 9, right? Where is my ratio? 16 by 9. Yeah, 16 by 9. So I would, you know, it kind of feels like a bit of a something like this. You see, this looks a little bit better. So I don't know, something is missing. I would just simply lift this up a bit, yeah. This barrel, yeah. Just run it a bit higher, so, you know. Maybe this way, like this, right? Okay, second image. This is a really good framing, right? This is a really good framing. It's a really difficult thing to frame because of this tripod, right? And I know that, and that was the whole purpose of this thing. But your problem is this, yeah. This is pure white, and I guarantee you it's pure white. So we could actually, you know, sort of sample it, right? And you can see that the sample is pure white, meaning you completely blown out the background here. There's no details in here, right? So this is too bright, and your eye is gonna just get drawn in here, stuck in here. There's nothingness, right? It's like a desert. So if this is a good framing, right, that's not a bad framing, but this should be the same tonality or close to it as this one, and that's all due to lighting setup, right? What I would suggest in this case, because I know your light is spilling on the floor, create flagging, okay? So what you do is you simply, instead of placing, it's like flagging is like the opposite of reflector, okay? Instead of reflecting light, okay, flag, what it will do, it will absorb light, okay? So you put a flag underneath a light so that it will not spill on the floor. And you simply give it a very black material, because black absorbs light, right? And make sure it's non-reflective and non-specular. It's going to be like a black hole, basically, all right? Absorbing everything, you know, all the light from this, let's say it's a light on the camera, right? So the light falls here. You simply place a flag underneath it. It's not gonna spill on the floor, because the light's gonna bounce here and bounce back up, right? But this, you know, this light's gonna cast some light on the main gun. You need to operate with it to make sure it's in the right position. So it's a bit difficult because, you know, you can see that lights are on the top, right? And these are what is that, spotlights? Why it's this area light? Oh, it's like a tiny area light. So you made a very tiny area light, and probably extremely strong, yeah? So basically it looks like a flashlight, because There's another problem, you see. If you do something like this, it's gonna be extremely harsh, because the smaller the light source gets, the more harsh shadows will be. And it's cool for dramatic image, because you can see that the shadows are pretty sharp, yeah, which means the light source is very small. But it will create this kind of a blown out areas, which is very problematic. And in this case, it's gonna be impossible to flag it, because it's literally just a point light, because it's a tiny light, like a tiny flashlight, right, just flashing down exactly in this spot. Maybe moving this flashlight a bit to the other side would help, somewhere here, right? And then putting some, maybe like a reflector on this side. Lighting is extremely difficult, right? I'm not saying it's easy, it's difficult. But there you go, yeah? Also the floor, you could just reduce the specular value. And instead of making it light gray, just make it a bit darker, yeah? That's another thing you could do. And the light will not reflect, it will just get absorbed. Okay? But then you'll need more light on the gun itself, because the floor is not going to reflect and light back on a gun. So it's a trade-off, but there you go. So the light on the gun itself is cool, but this floor needs to be taken care of, yeah. This is really cool render, yeah. I really like it. This is pretty cool, and I don't really have any beef with this one. I like the smoke, is pretty awesome. This Aurora Halo, whatever the fuck it's called, this is a little bit strong. It could be a little bit dimmed down, but other than that, this is pretty cool render. I like it. Even, and see, depth of field works in this one, because you got the front fuzzy and the back fuzzy, and I'm guessing you focus on one of these bits when the origin point is, because when you focus camera on an object, it's gonna focus on the origin point of this object, right? So you got lucky that it just focused in here. And this is a correctly used depth of field, yeah? So you got the main thing in focus, and both sides fall out of focus. And this is really nicely done. This leg is a leading line towards the gun. This is a good render. The smoke fills the gap in here. This is good, yeah? This is really good. I like it. This one is off, yeah? You're trying to fit the whole gun in. You don't have to do this, yeah? You don't have to fit the whole gun in. This would look far better if you actually cut it, right? Something like this, okay? Even deeper, probably. Let me just try this. Oh, this is... hang on a second. Let me just... let me redo this properly. Let me just switch this to 16:9. There you go. It's gonna maintain the ratio. Something like this, maybe. Maybe even higher. This would work, something like this. I know it's cut off, but it's okay. But the framing is much better. You see what I mean? Now it kind of makes sense. It's a really difficult object to shoot, like I said, with these tripod legs. This is why, cutting this tripod on the bottom is not a bad idea. You could go actually ultra wide, yeah. So instead of going 16:9, go 21:9, something like this, and that's fine. Yeah, something like this. It's not ideal, but it will do. Something like this would work, and then you can extend it by using where is this tool here? You can just extend it magically. Watch this. Content aware fill, right? I should fix our image. There you go. And this is a far better framing, yeah, because it fits the whole gun. You don't have to fit everything in the picture. If you look at professional portrait pictures, a lot of them have cut off things, yeah. Like, for example, if I pop to give an example, right, from my own work, if I can find it. So if I go to my portrait, right, you'll see a lot of cut off heads, right? See what I mean? It's all about framing. It's not about what you're cutting off. It's you need to know how to cut it off. But I got a lot of cut off, and they bring closeness to the viewer, right? they bring closeness to the viewer. They bring this 3D feel into the image. But I got tons of cut-off images, right, all over the place, and it's nothing wrong with cutting off, even very dramatically. You know, this is a very strong cutoff, but it works. Yeah. So, you know, and yeah, I get tons of them, right? So cutting off images is fine, but you need to know how to do it. So study portraiture, I would suggest, and see how people compose images with, you know, with literally chopping elements of images. But this is, yeah, this area here is problematic. It's just way too much of a unnecessary space, because the focus in here is here, right, not on this part, and this is like what, 1/3 of the image. You see what I mean? But the lighting on the floor is good, you know, it's well controlled. See, this level of lighting, yeah, this level of lighting here should be on this image in here, right, and this would look much better. And also this gun as well should be moved a little bit backwards, so you could cut off this leg as well, so the whole gun could be moved a little bit to the left. Yeah, you don't have to fit the whole thing in. Okay, and the last one. Yeah, this is good, but it's a little bit claustrophobic. Like I said before, I would just zoom it out a bit. Yeah, also this is a little bit too bright. Yeah, this should be toned down. This pulls a lot of attention. This is probably this and this are two of the brightest spots in the image. Look, what you're seeing now, you're seeing this one and this one. See what I mean? So, and the details in the gun are really dark. Yeah. So the framing is okay. I would make it a bit wider, meaning I would make this whole frame a little bit wider. Okay, so kind of like this, right? Okay, and then, you know, so there's more space here, more space here. It's just a little bit too close to the edge. Okay. This is actually a very good candidate for 29:1. Yeah, this is perfect ultra wide angle image, and this is, look how much more powerful this looks, because it's actually I'm gonna fix it properly if I can. Actually, I can show you. I'm gonna grab this one here. I don't know, probably gonna grab a bit of this gun image here, but we'll see, maybe not. So content aware fill. Maybe it's gonna behave. Well, look at that, Photoshop knows. And here, one more time. Let's grab, this is really close, guys. Something like this. And content aware fill. Okay, and see how much better this looks, right? You just give this gun a bit of a space to breathe, and that's actually quite fine to include the whole thing. And again, I would say this should be more or less as dark as this one, right? And this floor should be tiny bit. You need to maintain the level of brightness. So this is darker than this, which means this is gonna pull much more attention. And because there's a contrast in here between the dark feet of the gun and the bright floor, you'll get people looking in here and then jumping in here, and there's nothing in these two areas because the main focus is here and it's really dark. Yeah, if I collapse this closer, you know, you'll see my point. See my point now? You know, the attention is back here now. It's still too bright in here. So what I would suggest is to either learn how to control the lights a bit better, or use different lighting, or render separately the gun and the floor. Okay, and then sort of, you know, composite it in Photoshop. And, you know, you don't have to fit everything in the same ratio. Some of my images, you know, are in 21:9, some of them are in 16:9. It doesn't really matter, as long as the image looks good. That's what's important. Yeah, but this is like a candidate, perfect candidate for ultra wide shot, deadpan shot. But, you know, it's the camera angle, and I like it that it's actually on the level with the main barrel of the gun, with the main part of the gun. So it's not shooting from below or from the top, it's just like leveled. And it's a deadpan, which means, you know, probably the focal length here is quite high, yeah, 125, yeah. So this is a telephoto zoom lens, right? So it's like a telephoto shot. Because what 50 is in the normal length, is how we see the world, more or less, 50 millimeters. So 125 is you know, it's a telephoto length, so it's gonna be a lot of compression, which is perfectly fine for this shot, right? So it's cool to see that you're experimenting with focal length and depth of field, because, you know, that's where the art is. And this is actually really well framed. But like I said, I'll just give a bit more space in here, and definitely work on these on these lights. Like I said, again, look at the lighting, right, in this image, right? I would still, for example, argue that the neck is a little bit too bright. You know, if I was editing this picture now, I would probably, this neck would be as dark as this. It's a little bit too hot, yeah. But you know, most of these images, when I shoot, I know where to put them, the brightest spot, yeah. I know where to put the brightest spot. You see, the spot is in here, and there's a triangle in which you're gonna travel, right? This hand is already darker. There are tiny differences in lighting, but they're really important, right? You see the face is a little bit brighter than the neck, but at the same time you got a lot of points of contrast in here, and your eye is gonna get locked in here. Then again, neck of a woman is kind of, you know, sexy, so we want to look at this too. So you're gonna dance between those two, and controlling lighting is probably the most important part of imagery, right? Yeah, same here, you see, that's where the light is focused. So when I got like a really bright background, do I have an example of a really bright background? Like this one, for example, right? These points are really bright, right? They're really bright, but there's so much contrast in here that your attention is gonna go directly in here, right? And that's how I think this should be considered, right? Also, you got this bright spot in here. See, this is a really bright one, so that's where the eye is gonna go as well, right? So the best way to spot it, okay, is to zoom really far, like really far, and then you can see where the main hotspots are, right? And then you think if this is what you want. Yeah. So this brightness level here is perfect. This is too bright. This might be a bit too dark, you know, something like this would be good here, right, on this side. Or like a kind of like a gradient going from top down. So yeah. You could, if I was doing it, for example, what you could do is render this on a very white background, and then you could simply extract the shadows in Photoshop and overlay them on a pure background, which will light separately. So you got the separate lighting on the background, separate lighting on a gun, and you just composite them too in Photoshop. Or like I said, you know, play with lights so you get the lighting right. And lighting in Blender is a little bit tricky, I know, because it doesn't really behave like in real life. The add-on I'm using called Photographer, I would suggest to everyone to have a look in this one, okay? This one is really fantastic add-on. I think not sure if you've been using this one or not, but this is a really complex add-on, and it's very good for setting lights, cameras and exposure, etc., you know, in a scene, right? Probably the best that you can buy for setting renders. Anyway, guys, I think that's it for this video. Really good job, man. I mean, you know, this model is stellar, yeah. So if I were you, I would just simply have some fun and play with some new angles, you know, and have some fun with lock to view. have some fun with new angles, you know, and just try something different. Let me just sink this down. There we go. Play with something different. Like I said, you don't have to always, you know, encompass the whole object in your frame. You can just play with it. Like you see, for example, something like this would work, you know, maybe, right? Like a tiny, you know, gentle Dutch angle, a little bit closer here to the edge and a little bit further here from the edge. And you can put, you know, some name here or some name here, and depth of field on this, so it's kind of blurrish and the main focus is on this thing, you know. You could even zoom out a little bit closer, you know, like this, and cut off the handle at the back, you know. This could also work, you see. So there's a lot, and you could name could be in here then, you see, and or here and here, something like name of the gun here, SIG here, or the other way around. But like I said, this is not an easy object to shoot because of the legs and because of the length of it, right? So top view could be also interesting, right? Like this. Anyway, guys, well, I hope you learned something cool. Thanks for submitting the work, Rogue. It's, you know, really cool to see that gun done so well. So I appreciate that, and, you know, keep up the good work. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you next video.